Arnab Goswami on the debate, presented by Amity University, powered by RP Sanjeev Goenka Group, Century Ply and B1.
Good evening, viewers. This Sunday evening, we have thousands of viewers writing in from Europe and America, watching Republic these days, and they say to us that we need to go global. We're getting so much appreciation from viewers across the world and, of course, across India for our coverage and for the way in which we are telling you the truth which is being concealed on both sides. For the truth sometimes needs to be heard. And Americans are listening more to us than they are to channels operating from their soil, which are feeding them the standard Washington propaganda. Ladies and gentlemen, the war is getting into a phase now where the Russians will move in to capture Kiev. It's an inevitability. As Putin hits militarily, China will hit and negotiate diplomatically. Now, I've been saying this as recently as last night, that this is a China-led plan in which what the Russians are doing is only the first move. The Russians are only, I repeat, the first flank of a much bigger, more complicated war that is being opened up. This is a different kind of fight than the ones which Western analysts are looking at it. This is a fight to geostrategically challenge and destroy American and Western dominance. Now, as for America, for all the big talk and the bluster, people of America, hear me tonight. Your president has already capitulated. Biden has capitulated because he has no choice. And that is why he's sending his national security advisor to Rome tomorrow, in a move that smacks of desperation to meet Xi Jinping's representative. That meeting is happening tomorrow. Don't believe any of the American propaganda, ladies and gentlemen. America is in trouble. Don't believe any of the propaganda channels like CNN. Switch them off. The real story is that America is so desperate, that it is repeatedly sending its representatives to Venezuela to beg for an agreement with the Venezuelans for more oil. The Americans are even willing to compromise with Iran. And the Iranians are getting very aggressive with the Americans over the nuclear agreement. And I know that what I'm saying will upset the Americans. But I also have thousands of Americans who watch Republic and bless us for the truth we tell them about their own country. In the new world, where everyone will have to look out for themselves, every nation, I suggest just one thing to the Americans. Please, Americans, you please look out for yourself. We will look out for ourselves. And the world is not your responsibility, dear Americans. The world will look out for itself. And the world, dear Americans, in case you are not noticing, even now, has changed. We have two debates tonight. First, the reality about America that Americans are in denial about. And I find it really funny that this man, whose cognitive ability is in question, repeatedly tells us about World War III. Debate number 2 tonight. The Pakistanis freaked out when by mistake an Indian missile went to the other side. But the bigger issue is the political missile that's going to hit Imran Khan. It's hashtag Imran going gone. And here are the headlines this Sunday evening on the debate tonight. Russian offensive is only getting more intense. Russian troops are storming western Ukraine now. Chechnya bombed, Kharkiv shelled, Mariupol attacked. Russia's not backing down. The United States wants China, says Beijing could face major consequences if it supports Russia anymore. Ukraine, Poland, Belarus, the Republic Media Network gets you the largest war coverage right from ground zero. And it's Team Rahul versus Team Sonia now. Rahul camp says Sonia should quit as Congress president. And complete chaos as usual as Imran faces a no-confidence vote. He's taken on the Pakistani army. It's all happening in Pakistan. And ladies and gentlemen, first I begin with the ground report. Today is the 18th day of the war in Ukraine, the 18th day. And the rhetoric about a third world war is growing. Every morning, Biden talks about a third world war. Every evening he forgets about it. The next morning he repeats it again. And leading the tirade, all of this tirade is, of course, Biden and his team. With the lowest approval ratings, the highest disapproval ratings, a man hated and made fun of across the United States of America and the entire world, constantly tells us World War III, ladies and gentlemen, he says, Joe Biden says, is coming. The talk is perfectly timed to distract from his domestic issues, and tonight, it is time to expose the American truth. Hashtag American Truth. Let's debate.
The war has been raging since past 18 days, but it is time to put focus on America now, that has been trying to choreograph every move sitting 6,000 miles away.
We'll defend every single inch of NATO territory with the full might of the united and galvanized NATO. We will not fight a war against Russia in Ukraine. Direct confrontation between NATO and Russia is World War III.
Sanctioning Russia has now put Biden in a catch-22 because now they're effectively groveling and making concessions on once heavily sanctioned Venezuela, all to get oil there some way.
The second big reason for inflation is Vladimir Putin. From the moment he put his over 150,000 troops on the Ukrainian border, the price of gasoline in January went up 75 cents. And Putin began amassing troops along the border, and guess what? The world took notice. And those of you who work in the business know that the market anticipated. Prices went up more. And then Putin invaded. Make no mistake, inflation is largely the fault of Putin.
Sanctions on Russia have put the Biden administration in a catch because now they are groveling and trying to give concessions to Venezuela, which was once heavily sanctioned, to get some oil their way.
We have an interest globally in maintaining a steady supply of energy, including through our diplomatic efforts. So all of these things come to bear when it comes to Venezuela, as well as to other countries around the world where we have a multiplicity of interests and use diplomacy to try to advance them.
Beyond the struggle to find alternatives to Russian oil, sanctions on Russia are hitting home for Americans from aviation to banking. Companies are now facing huge economic hit after cutting off from Russia.
The great old days have been over for America. The hegemony is now over and the world has moved on. The Saudi Arabian prince doesn't pick Joe Biden's calls anymore, and Serbia has rejected the NATO overtures. And the United States consulate in Erbil, Iraq has been hit by multiple ballistic missiles.
American inaction is being called even more prominently after an airstrike close to the Poland border by the Russians.
Для цього ми ще раз і ще раз просимо закрити небо, тому що воювати, ви розумієте, з ворогом, який навіть не долітає до нас, а здійснює запуск крилатих ракет, треба мати серйозну систему протиповітряної оборони.
Now, America must answer. Let's debate.
I want to ask, we have Duff Zake, Mark Merowitz, Glenn Grant, Colonel Glenn Grant and Anders Scott on one side from Washington, New York, Latvia and London respectively. We have Sergei Strokin from Moscow, Andrew K. P. Leung from Hong Kong and Michael Tracy is joining us from Poland. Now, may I start with you, Mark, Professor Mark. Why does Biden talk about World War III twice a day? Nowadays, every day he talks about World War III. Is it because George Soros desperately wants World War III? Is it because people like Bloomberg, who have funded dozens of millions of dollars to help the Democrats, are going all out that, there needs to be World War III? Is he a handmaiden for this American financial elite?
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to appear. First of all, I would disagree with you with all due respect when you say that Biden is such a hated person in America. He's our president. And whether I'm a Republican or a Democrat, I respect our president. So your characterization of our president, I think, was inappropriate in terms of, what you're talking about, his being a puppet and so forth. I think there have been missteps on the part of the American administration, no question about it, missteps. But I think all in all, the direction of American foreign policy now, coalescing the Europeans, working with Europeans and trying to forge an international coalition against Russia is in a good direction and has been getting bipartisan approval. Now, whether going after Venezuela and Iran and so forth, we can debate that. I personally don't see that as a very good trajectory, but it's a very difficult situation. And again, I want to conclude my point by saying, Arnab, that I respect the President of the United States. I respect American institutions. And the word World War III, that's the President's characterization of it. Perhaps Americans will take issue with that characterization, but we're really at the brink of something really, really bad. And who's doing it? Russia. They're the ones who have escalated the nuclear level and doing all these things. And candidly, and I think most of the analysts around the world have noted, the United States has not overreacted by upping the nuclear level or taking very strong stands that could be deemed to be aggressive. So while I have some nitpicking about and points not in agreement with the president's policy, I respect the president. I don't think he's anybody's puppet, and he's doing the very best he can. And I say that very sincerely.
Just quick response, I'll get Sergey to tell you, you can use different words for it. English is a language with many synonyms to every word. You can say anything, but I can say that, okay, maybe it's not hate, but you have about 60% of Americans who disapprove of your president. That's big, which means he's very, very unpopular, right? The second point tonight is, and I'd get Sergey on it, I think the Americans are in a pickle, Mark. The enthusiasm that Putin will exhaust himself, we will all get together, it'll be the world versus Putin, is not happening. And the American national security desperately is flying down tomorrow to Rome. And the person who is really going to control the way things happen now will be Xi Jinping, who's coming out from the shadows. So I want Sergey to come in on this. I personally think America vying for a war is impractical because the Americans cannot afford a war. But Sergey, why is Biden talking about World War III with such enthusiasm? Why is he talking about it all the time?
Thanks for having me. You know, in fact, I was one of the few analysts here in Moscow who pinned high hopes on President Biden. And I used to argue with my colleagues who were saying that Biden can probably bring a disaster to US-Russian relations and to the world. And now I have to confess and say that what President Biden is doing comes as a major disappointment for me. Let me tell you in practical terms what we are witnessing now. We are awash in sanctions. But let us ask ourselves a simple question. Can these sanctions stop President Putin? Of course not. These sanctions would only reinforce his resolve to go ahead with this plan. So what these sanctions have done, they created enormous problems to ordinary Russians like me, who were believing that America can come with the torch of democracy. So we have problems in transferring currency, in daily life, the prices are skyrocketing. But again, President Biden is waging war against ordinary Russians, including that obscure minor group of those who try to support him. And this will only consolidate anti-American feelings here. I can wager my entire collection of books on diplomacy and single malts saying that President Biden could have stopped this war in one day, because if he could have sent a signal to President Zelensky, obviously we will see a political settlement, some sort of negotiations. But look what Americans are doing. Listen. On one hand, State Secretary Blinken says that there's no chance for Ukrainian army to resist, but at the same time, they are supplying arms to Ukraine. So what is the reason for that? You want to prolong this agony? There's no chance for that. So President Biden acts like a coward. You see, he is not able to face President Putin in combat. He can't risk that. But at the same time, he is getting more gasoline into fire. And the result would be devastated Ukraine. And this would be a bill to be settled by President Biden, not President Putin. Because this will not stop President Putin.
See, the thing is, Americans are in a little bit of a flap right now, Dov. You know, and maybe the Americans didn't factor this in, but the way the Americans, Dov, are scampering to stitch together an alliance of countries to counter the Russians. Straight question to you: America, when asked why are you doing this, says, "Are we doing this for democracy?" Now, why are you pushing NATO? We're pushing NATO for democracy. Why were you trying to militarize Ukraine? Well, whatever we were doing, we're doing it for democracy. Why did you put sanctions on Venezuela? Why did you ruin the lives of the Venezuelan people? Well, we wanted to teach them a lesson because they were not democratic. Why were you fighting with the Iranians? Well, to defend democracy. Now tell me, Dov, has Nicolas Maduro suddenly become democratic? Because I know that a large bunch of American diplomats have been sent to Venezuela to plead with Maduro to make up for the loss of Russian oil with Venezuelan oil. And they are telling Maduro that if you do business with us, if you give us oil, we'll lift the sanctions. Why were the sanctions put down? To defend democracy. Maduro's not become democratic, so why are the sanctions being lifted now? It's just, you know, it's becoming blatantly hypocritical. Don't you think so, Dov?
Well, I happen to disagree with the administration. I don't think we should have offered, or we should be talking about anything to lift sanctions on Venezuela. I would say that, first of all, there wasn't a lot of diplomats. It was actually 2 plus our ambassador, but that's not really the important issue. We did get 2 of our hostages released, and that is important. I'm dead set against making any kind of agreement with Venezuela. And I would also say this. You may call Mr. Biden a coward. I don't agree. I think he's making some mistakes, but I don't think he's a coward at all. You didn't call Mr. Putin a tyrant, and our Russian friend who says that Biden could have stopped it in a day, and why don't we stop it now? Sure, we should stop it now, right? And just, excuse me, sir, I'm speaking. Be quiet. Excuse me, I'm speaking. I listen to you. I listen to you. Please be quiet.
Okay, I am waiting
Now,
for an answer.
Mr. Putin is destroying cities, bombing hospitals, bombing cancer wards, killing children.
Ukrainian army.
And by the way, it was not we that forced NATO to do anything. Every one of these countries, plus countries not in NATO, Australia's not in NATO, Japan's not in NATO, 141 countries that called Russia an aggressor, they're not all in NATO. So stop this nonsense. What we should be doing, and I don't agree with the administration, is letting jets fly in to knock down more Russian planes so that Mr. Putin realizes he cannot win this war no matter how much he bombs. And one other thing, the reason Mr. Biden talks about World War III is because, frankly, and I don't agree with this, he does not want to provoke a Russian response with nuclear weapons. But I would argue that even though we're shipping weapons to Ukraine, Mr. Putin has not done anything. And I believe that he's just a big bully. And if we stood up more in his face, he would back down. And he would not be able to silence his entire country.
Yeah,
He's
sure,
been
but-
giving them
yeah,
fake
sure.
news the whole
Sure, no,
time.
no,
Indian
sure.
television, Arnab's
Dove.
program shows
Dove.
what they're doing and that Putin is a liar.
Okay, so see, Dove, as I've always said, I will give my perspective. I'll give it very clearly, and I know that what I'm saying. I began my entire program tonight by saying that when I tell you the facts, the way I look at it, you will not like it. But I'm not here to please anyone. I did not call your president a coward. It was a phrase you used. Whether that was a Freudian slip or not, I do not know.
No.
I said
No, it wasn't
that he's
you.
unpopular.
It wasn't you. It was
that he
our
may be
Russian
hated,
friend.
but I did not call him a coward.
No, you didn't call him a
Okay,
coward.
so
Our
I'll
Russian
just give you a.
friend did. They called
Let me
him
respond.
president.
Let me respond. Okay, heated tempers, but let me just respond with some facts out here. I believe, and I'll get Anders in. I'll get Andrew KP Leung in. Let's debate this out, gentlemen. I'm saying that I just said that America is stuck in a little bit of a pickle because there's major price rise. There are midterm elections. Okay, he's increasing the rhetoric on World War III. But let's look at the facts here. Anders, fact is that Iran is dictating terms in the nuclear deal renegotiation, and it is doing so in the last 10 days, demanding change of position, demanding that America should now remove the unacceptable proposals. The way I look at it is, Anders, why has Iran raised the stakes in the nuclear talks with all the world powers, saying the United States has to drop the unacceptable demands? The prospects of reaching an accord were happening. But obviously, Iran is smelling an opportunity here. And probably if the United States gives in to Iranian demands, it will only be to secure Iran's oil for the USA by letting it legally back in the international markets. These are realities. I'm not taking a moral position on what is right and wrong. I'm just giving a fact out here that while America is being tough on sanctions, it's getting into a tough spot itself. Anders, let's talk reality. Let's not talk about you're right, I'm wrong, you're democratic, I'm dictatorial. I don't want to give the moral argument. I want to give the real argument out here. Would you respond, please, Anders?
Well, all of these countries that are exporting oil are now in a better position because we were previously dependent on Russian oil, and we're moving from Russian oil and gas to other things. That's just the reality. It's realpolitik. What Biden is doing really is he's keeping America's powder dry. NATO is keeping NATO's powder dry, and it is waiting for the Russian army to destroy itself in Ukraine, which we watch now every day on TV. We see the Russian tanks being destroyed by Javelin missiles. We're seeing Russian helicopters and Russian fighter jets and falling down and being destroyed by Stinger missiles. So really, all we have to do is wait and let Putin destroy himself at this point. That is the American position.
Then why waste time meeting Xi Jinping's representative in Rome? If everything's going fine, Why talk?
Well,
let them destroy themselves.
Yeah, we have a belief in improving our alliances across the board and engaging countries, whether that be China, Iran, Venezuela. We are trying to engage countries and create better alliance systems against Russia at this point.
Okay, you're making it sound like this is the last chance for the Chinese to become the good boys again, or else. Andrew, you heard that?
Yeah, well, if I'm allowed to respond, please, right? Well, I think that this talk about nuclear war is a lot of nonsense, because this is going to be Armageddon for the entire world. So I don't believe this talk about the Third World War, either from Russia or from the United States. Secondly, there is no doubt that that President Biden cannot win this war just by supplying arms to Ukraine and by staying put. You know, and neither the United States nor NATO are prepared to engage in war with Russia, knowing that this is going to lead to Armageddon for the entire world. And you can't win this war. You can't bend Russia to its knees just by supplying arms to Ukraine and using Ukrainian blood as well as destruction as property as a kind of wager. This is totally immoral in my view. But I think as far as China is concerned, China is prepared to mediate, but China is unlikely to be on Americans' hymn book, because what America wants to do is to impose its unilateral position and ignoring anything, what the Russians are saying, what the Russians want. I mean, this is no way to negotiate. I mean, basically, this means that you're allying countries like China, which the United States
devalued the ruble?
And antagonize.
Why have the Chinese devalued the ruble? If you're true friends of the Russians, why have the Chinese devalued the ruble? If you're such great friends of the Russians and they're in financial trouble, you should not devalue the ruble.
No, I think that as far as Beijing is concerned, obviously China doesn't want a war. Now, China is, of course, is the biggest trading partner for Ukraine. And China has got no hostility towards the Ukrainians. And in fact, that at this moment, China is also supplying humanitarian aids to the Ukrainian people. So what China wants is the peaceful Europe and to develop.
Yeah, you're playing on both sides, Andrew.
Why should
you're playing on both sides?
Europe? It doesn't make sense.
You can't play on both sides.
So I think China is prepared to negotiate, but
I don't know. I find everyone in a spot here. I'd like to go across to Glenn. Glenn, on another note, do you think the Russians are going to push further? Why are the Russians threatening Finland, Sweden? Dare you not join the NATO? Or we are going to hit you too?
Do
you think there's a remote possibility of that? Do you think A, one, B, do you think the Russians can get ambitious beyond Ukraine?
Yes, and it's because Putin's been saying so, and he's backing up his words with terror. I mean, he's carpet bombing cities and missile cities, and you saw, missile strike last night killed 35. So Putin is actually doing what he says he'll do. Now, Sweden and Finland are two independent countries. If they choose to join NATO, then good luck to them. I think they're better in than they are out. Putin has already been overflying both countries with his attack aircraft in the last couple of weeks, which doesn't exactly say good things for him. I would just jump back about some of the things you're saying. When you say things are facts, some of your facts are opinions. For example, the inevitability of Russian forces. Inevitability of Russian forces taking Kiev. It's not an inevitability at all. It's a possibility, because the troops that they're pushing in to try and take Kiev are troops that have already failed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times before. And they're getting tired, they're getting cold, and they're not exactly very happy, because at the moment they've got Chechens behind them who will kill them if they turn round.
Yep.
Now that doesn't make for a very happy soldier, and I don't think. And it's also the defence area on the northwest side is pretty strong. Out of Irpin up into Kiev, it's a steep bank, and it's the sort of thing that people can defend for a long time. Now, I may be wrong. It may be inevitable, but I don't think it is at the moment.
No, it's okay. Yeah, Glenn, I mean, as I said, you're British, such a wonderful language. These are latest pictures of Zelensky meeting his injured soldiers. English is such a wonderful language. Though I must tell you, Glenn, that we in India speak English better than those in Britain nowadays. That's my own opinion. But this is about inevitability or possibility. It's a question of degrees. It's just a question of degrees, Glenn. We don't fundamentally disagree. But I'm going back to the basics of this. Iran blatantly fired a missile near the US consulate in Erbil. 12 missiles. 12 missiles. That's taking a chance. At another time, another place, the Americans would have responded differently. Today, America, Glenn, cannot. MBS is not taking Biden's calls, despite Saudi Arabia having the capacity to help. Saudi Arabia can. The consulate was
empty. It's being built. It was empty. There was nobody in it. So, they were just firing at an empty building.
I'm just saying one thing. Glenn, not provoking you here, but I'm just saying that everybody's taking a shot at the Americans. Everybody's taking chances. The MBS is not taking Biden's calls. Saudi says to America, listen, we are not going to help you with your daily oil barrel needs. The Serbian president has snubbed NATO today. UAE has jolted the USA. They've ignored the calls, desperate calls from Washington for more oil to stabilize prices by knocking off 13% oil prices when they themselves felt like. So everybody's taking a shot at the Americans. And I'm just asking you whether Americans, Michael Tracy is joining us from Poland, whether that's a message for America as well. They wanted to come out looking as the saviors of the free world, but are the moves backfiring? Michael, what do you think? Michael from Poland, Michael Tracy.
Well, on the topic of Joe Biden's unpopularity, it is true that his poll numbers are relatively low in the U.S., but to the extent that World War III is potentially in the offing, it's his domestic political opponents, meaning the Republicans, who are demanding that he take even more aggressive action vis-a-vis Ukraine. The Senate Republican caucus almost unanimously demanded a few days ago that Biden not capitulate or appease Putin any longer and facilitate this transfer of fighter jets into Ukrainian airspace, which would be a threshold crossing event if the U.S. were to undertake it. So, Joe Biden rhetorically is saying that he doesn't want to instigate World War III, but ultimately it's really just a matter of rhetoric. I'm currently in Rzeszów, Poland, which is near the Ukraine border, and there are large numbers of U.S. military personnel here. I'm not even sure that most Americans are aware of this, but they're here. And what are they doing? Well, they're facilitating these transfers of weaponry into Ukraine, often in the cover of night. And there's very little transparency as to what the logistics of this operation are, to what extent there could be some U.S. involvement in terms of the actual Ukrainian territory that's not being disclosed. Reporters are not being permitted to enter or view these new installations in the area that have been built up. So there's more and more escalatory steps being taken each day. And it's almost culminated just a few hours ago with Russia having apparently struck this U.S. military, base or facility, U.S. military facility in Western Ukraine that just last year the U.S. military was using as a site of its many exercises that it undertakes in Eastern Europe. So Joe Biden, on the one hand, might be saying, in theory, he does not want to precipitate World War III. But in terms of the actual policy, there's this kind of incremental buildup where it does appear that we're on the potential precipice of, at the very least, a widened conflict. And public opinion in the U.S. is all in favor of even potentially a no-fly zone, which would be the ultimate escalation. So I think we have a recipe in place here for something fairly ominous.
Yeah, Mark. Yeah. Yeah. Mark, increasingly this view is coming across, and I mean, let's accept one thing, Mark. The rest of the world, right, including real democracies and really large and powerful democracies like India, have rejected this notion of America doing this to free democracy. America has to be held accountable for what is happening right now, and the point that Michael has raised there, that this has a lot to do with domestic politics in America, cannot be. Even you cannot. You're in New York, Mark. You know the reality there. There is pressure on Biden to turn into, more and more aggressive every day.
Right. First of
to
all,
save himself.
President Biden rejected the no-fly zone. President Biden rejected the transshipment of the MiGs to Ukraine. He has not been leveling the, as I said, he did not raise the nuclear level. He did a lot of things. Now, I wanted to react very
well. He rejected the deployment of Stinger missiles as well, and then after political pressure, ended up giving in.
I'd ask you not to interrupt me, Arnab. Could we speak without being interrupted? Would that be respectful?
No, I'm not.
Okay?
That's not me.
If I could finish
that's
sentence.
Michael. Why am I the one who's always
You're
being blamed by all of you? That's not even. I'm not even saying anything.
You're in charge, so let me finish. And Dove said the same thing before, and he was right also. No interruption. Let everybody speak, be respectful, and let everybody have a chance. Okay, so Biden did not escalate this, and Russia started it. Now, about China, I just wanted to say that the greatest respect for China as a major power. If it wants to be a responsible power in the world, then we do want the intervention of China to finish this, to stop this war. And you will note that China has been very circumspect. I have my hat off to the Israelis and the Turks and others who have been trying to mediate this horrible situation. And pointing fingers at Republicans and Democrats is just a no-starter, because bipartisanship supporting the president here, including with respect to not escalating this issue. But let's understand one important point. Fiona Hill wrote in the Politico article, it's one of the most important articles I've read, and it's called Yes, He Would. And the problem you have with Vladimir Putin is every time you think he won't do something, he goes ahead and does it. And that is a very big problem. Furthermore, the international institutions, and I'm quoting Francis Fukuyama, who's a really intelligent fellow, says we need a full reset of international institutions, because how is it possible that this can go on, this attack on innocent civilians, war crimes taken, and I didn't say war crimes, our ambassador said in the UN, war crimes, killing of civilians reminiscent of the Holocaust and World War II, and all of those things can go on. And then I hear that the helping the Ukrainians is somehow aggressive. I'm sorry, I don't get it. I want the mediators in there. I want them to stop the fighting. Russia should pull out, and also not capture and kidnap mayors of cities like the city of Melitopol, where they're taking hostages. I mean, every single check mark in the human rights category has been violated, and no less slouch. And we have some British people here than The Economist magazine has a headline called "The Stalinization of Russia." And to your point about the inevitability of it, they say a very important thing. Does Putin want to occupy Ukraine even if he wins? He will not be able to do it, says The Economist, because American Army doctrine says to face down an insurgency, you need 20 to 25 soldiers for 1,000 people. Russia has a little over 4. So even if they, God forbid, should win and destroy Ukraine, how will they occupy Ukraine? They cannot win this war. They need to turn around and stop this war and have peace. And I say again, anybody can mediate it would be great. But pointing fingers at the United States will not achieve peace. Only peace will be achieved when Russia stops attacking Ukraine.
This is all getting very heated. It's getting very heated. Can I be allowed, Mark? Very impassionate intervention from you.
Of course.
But as a good citizen of your own country, Michael, I think that you should, as a responsible citizen of the free world, please understand that don't give me the civilians argument. Civilians, innocent civilians, when you were allying with Kurdish fighters during the conflict with ISIS, and then you abandoned them in 2019. You withdrew the American troops from the Syria-Turkey border. You then endorsed a Turkish assault on the US allied Kurds occupying North Syria. What loyalty did they have? Now you'll say they were not civilians. But then tell me, I'll tell you the civilians I care for as well. 300,000 of your local allies in Afghanistan, who worked and fought alongside you, helped you run Afghanistan. You left and you said, let them rot. Let them die. Those Afghans holding on to the wheels of the plane as your soldiers fled, Mark, they were civilians. The ones who hung on and fell from the sky, they were civilians. So please don't tell me either about democracy and don't tell me about civilians. Now Michael wanted to respond, but okay, so I'll open it up. But I just feel, I know America talking about civilians. I mean, you have no loyalty. You use allies and abandon them at your own sweet will, and you leave them to the dogs. Much like, you know, how the biblical Daniel was thrown to the lions. The USA abandoned its allies. But you know, you have to understand out here. You leave people to be devoured, and you use them. And I can also tell you this, that look at the way the mercenaries are fighting the war. I don't want to tell you about your war business because you'll get irritated, but Michael wants to respond to you. The fact is that you don't believe in democracy, Mark. You only care about oil. All about securing our oil supplies. The highfalutin talks about democracy. It's about oil. Michael is responding. Michael.
As far as Afghanistan, which you raise, last summer there was this fake contrived controversy in the US where there was outrage expressed at the humanitarian toll being taken on Afghan civilians because of the withdrawal of US troops that a lot of people denounced as ill-advised, right? And what do we have now months later? Well, the US is actively fomenting a humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan by its sanction regime, which is inhibiting the flow of necessary humanitarian supplies. So all these feigned concerns over civilian suffering are almost always in the US essentially fake or pretext to justify its foreign policy stance. And that also applies to Ukraine and Russia. We initially had the White House officials in the Biden administration insisting that they would, of course, under no circumstances, target civilians in Russia, meaning inflict pain on Russian civilians using its sanction regime. That was a few weeks ago. Then, not long after, the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, came out and publicly declared that the purpose of the sanctions was to harm civilians.
But you know, increasingly, Michael,
you're right that there's no consistency.
Yeah, but
whatsoever.
Michael, I increasingly there is a view, and yeah, sorry to interrupt, but increasingly there is a view. Increasingly there is a view, and that America must be held responsible for the war because it was America which was promising NATO membership to Ukraine. 2008. You sold them a big American dream. The chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, March 2008, boasted, oh, of course Ukraine will join NATO. It's 2022, for God's sake, you're not going to let them join NATO. The other point is, Dove, you see the Iranian economy. Look at the number of sanctions you used on Iran. Practically speaking, Dove, you know the Iranian economy has started to grow and grow quite well. They could be growing faster than the American economy. So question happens then that will sanctions work, Dove? What if they don't? What if there's leads to a recalibration instead?
Well, I happen to feel that sanctions are not enough. I strongly support, and by the way, this wasn't just me as a Republican, but there's an article in today's Washington Post by a leading Democratic analyst who worked in the Obama administration, who's a very capable woman who also supports, as I do, sending jets to Ukraine. There is much more we can do. I think the combination of helping the Ukrainians hold out plus sanctions, that would get Mr. Putin to agree finally to negotiate. And I actually wrote something in The Hill on Friday outlining how you could actually have a deal. But to me, as far as I'm concerned, it's not enough just to sanction. And it's not enough just to send javelins or to send stingers. They have to get air defense systems. They can get S-300s from some of our allies. They have to get fighter jets, which they can also get from our allies. That's the only way. You have to bloody Putin. You have to stand up to an aggressor, and that is bipartisan. In fact, the Congress is way, way ahead of the administration. Excuse me, let me finish. I listen to you.
With Russia,
I listen to you. Let me finish.
Calm down.
Arnab, shut the guy up.
Calm down, gentlemen. Okay, Michael, let him finish.
Shut him up.
Michael, let him finish. Let him finish.
Let him do it, and let him.
I listen to everyone. I listen to everyone, and I've been on this show.
Okay, Michael. Okay, Michael, let Dove complete.
Stop it.
Michael, let Dove complete. Yeah, continue, Michael. Dove.
Thank you very much, Arnab. You're a good moderator. I've always said that. The bottom line is the Congress has been ahead of this administration. It was ahead of this administration when it came actually to the oil sanctions. It's ahead of the administration, Republicans and Democrats, both on arms support. The administration is, frankly, in my view, doing something, but is still not doing enough. And only a combination of full-throated support, military support for the Ukrainians, which Putin will not do anything about because our equipment is killing his people right now, and he's done nothing about it. That plus sanctions will maybe knock sense into this man who many say are irrational. I don't know if he is. I'm not a psychiatrist, but it'll get. Excuse me. On this show, we listen to each other.
I want to just come in right now, please. You see, I tell you this, Dove.
He capitulates on the Stinger jets. He capitulates on the sanctions, the SWIFT sanctions.
Look,
he capitulates
he's interrupting you, Arnab.
Who's to say he's not going to
quiet? I'll listen to you.
That are now being demanded by maniacs.
Yeah, that's because I'm a mild-mannered fellow. You know, everyone talks over me. My question here is, I want to expose the hypocrisy a little bit. Michael, come on now, Michael. You're started to anchor the program. Just 1 minute. My question here is, and I'd like Anders to come in on it, because Anders hates Putin. He hates the Russian establishment. But I just want to ask Anders that see, Sergei Strokin is on the other side. I think you will agree that, you know, let me go back to Venezuela, the example nobody likes to talk about. 2019, you know, Donald Trump, he sent Michael Pence to Colombia. And he said, I have a message from President Donald Trump. And the message was to Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido. And he said, listen, I'm behind you. I'm behind you 100%. The people of America are behind you. We hate Maduro. We're going to remove Maduro. As long as Maduro is there, we'll never touch Venezuela. We will continue to impose sanctions. This is a corrupt financial network. You remember that, Sergey? It's a corrupt country, a corrupt financial network. If we need to have democracy in the world, Maduro must go.
But where is,
and now, Sergey,
Guaido now? Yeah, where is Guaido now? So there was a lot of talk.
I don't know where Guaido is, but I know where Maduro is now.
Maduro is in power. But listen, let me just respond to what colleagues were saying. Point number one: as things stand now, Russian army has already destroyed more than 90%. This is not a joke. You may check these figures. 90% of Ukrainian military infrastructure. Then what sort of, hopes can you pin on supporting supplying arms to Ukraine? So you are talking about sending jets. You want them to be downed. They would be down. And I want to respond also to British colleague who was talking about somehow weakening down Russia.
Glenn Grant.
Let me tell you that now trophy British arms and trophy American arms were sent to the armies of rebel republics. So they are using your weapons. And more weapons you would send, they would be either destroyed or would become as a trophy, the same way.
Okay, Anders responds. Anders and Glenn respond to you. Anders and Glenn respond to you. Anders.
Like it was in Afghanistan with Taliban.
If you watch the detailed information coming out of the battlefield in Ukraine, you see that probably the tanks that are being destroyed, the Russian tanks destroyed, is 10 to 1. or 5-1 in terms of the Ukrainians. Where the infrastructure, if you're talking about airfields, are useless at this point. Where the action is the Javelin missiles and the Stinger missiles. Those things are destroying the Russian army. The tanks, the Russian tanks are sitting ducks. The Russian air pilots are begging not to be sent into the fight because they know they'll be shot down.
Who told you this? Who told you this? Do you have evidence?
No, I mean, it's in the news. You read about it every day in the news. These things, the Russian army is getting destroyed, which is why you need to go to the Chechens and the Syrians and everybody else.
ABC of any politics, to go to alternative sources of news. You see? This is
okay, ladies and gentlemen, the talks are happening in Rome, and Republic will be in Rome tomorrow. Republic will be in Rome tomorrow. We have a crew in Rome. We have a crew in Poland. We have a crew in Belarus. We have multiple crews in Ukraine. Right now, maximum feet on the ground, only from the Republic Media Network. Watch out for those talks tomorrow between the American NSA and Xi Jinping's representative. I see it as a ray of hope. Will it actually become turn into one? We'll see. Coming up next on the other side, the chaos in Pakistan. I know we haven't focused on it a lot, but it needs to be talked about on the other side.